Bewildering plots, exotic locations, foreign lyrics, spectacular music, and yes, temperamental singers and conductors. This is the world of opera. In these programs, I will take you on a journey through the most thrilling art form of them all, one where all of human life and emotion are on display. Music fuses with words to create stories of love, betrayal, revenge, sorrow, passion, tragedy, and comedy, to create the stirring and most magical world of Italian opera. The Italians love opera. It's in their blood. In this film, I'll be looking at 4 composers who shaped Italian opera, beginning a whole new art form that 400 years later is still thrilling audiences. The smell of the grease paint. This is what opera is all about. I was born into this world. My father was a voice teacher, and he imbued in me a sense of theater, the voices, the love of vocal music, and just this backstage buzz just gets my blood going in a way that no other thing can. And now I'm lucky enough to have one of the top jobs in opera, music director at the Royal Opera House in London.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have 30 minutes, please. Thank you.
Today is the dress rehearsal of Barbiere di Siviglia, and I'm conducting the piece for the first time, so it's a really big moment for me, actually. The singers are all getting ready. Well, the announcement has been made that I have to get down to the pit, and so that's where I'm going now. Opera began in Italy 200 years before Rossini's highly charged Barber of Seville. And the man who composed its first undisputed masterpiece was Claudio Monteverdi. Monteverdi worked as court composer at the Ducal Palace here in Mantua. He came here in 1590 at the age of 23, employed by the powerful Gonzagas to supply music to order for all kinds of occasions. This is Vincenzo Gonzaga, Monteverdi's patron. Now here he's royally clad in ermine, and he had plenty of money for his mistresses, but was obscenely in arrears when it came to paying Monteverdi for his music. Monteverdi was treated like a slave in this ducal palace and was miserable, all the while producing heavenly music. Monteverdi wrote a wide range of music for his employer, and the fashion at the time was for extravagant courtly entertainments using speech, songs, and dance. These were going to provide the basis for something entirely new. In the late 1590s, a group of Florentine intellectuals got together and tried to find a way to combine music and drama. They wanted to return to the classical Greek and Roman idea of theater, of declamation. But what they wanted to achieve with the music and this declamation was something more expressive, more powerful, more emotional. Inspired by these ideas, Monteverdi used the Greek myth of Orpheus and created one of the first examples of what was to become a new art form: opera. Orpheus himself is a singer, so of course his story fitted perfectly with the idea of having a completely sung drama. He uses his musical powers at the gates of Hades to bring his wife back from the dead. But before the story starts, there's a prologue. In introducing his first character, the character named Music, or the spirit of music, if you like, perfectly shows this marriage of speech and music. Io la musica son che ai dolci accenti. There's no real pulse in the music, it's just free. So far tranquillo ogni turbato cuore. Just a few chords and, yes, almost spoken word, recitativo, or in English, recit. That's the shorthand we use. This sung speech was the revolutionary idea that created opera, telling a story and developing characters. Now, Orfeo, donde vieni in a different tempo? Dove vai? Where have you come from? Where are you going? Ninfa che porti. Monteverdi successfully integrated this sung speech with songs, dance, and scenic effects to create a complete dramatic world. And it was unveiled in 1607 to a delighted audience in Mantua at carnival time. The British Library holds a rare print of Monteverdi's Orfeo. I was very excited to examine it with the early music expert, Marshall Marcus. The word opera didn't really exist yet. This was called a favola, a fable, if you like, a story.
So it's like a sketch, and I'm thinking of something like, say, Kind of Blue, that famous album with Miles Davis. He goes into the studio, he's written out a little bit of stuff, he's got a few numbers here and there, and he gives it to the guys, and they use that. They create from that this extraordinary recording. This is much more akin to, I think, how Monteverdi's players are working.
So they're the jazz musicians of their time, is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I would say.
And Monteverdi used his musicians to create a whole range of moods and colors. Listen to this dance rhythm, very characteristic of Monteverdi. 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes 2 and sometimes 3. A pivotal moment is when the messenger tells Orfeo that his wife has died. Here Monteverdi creates a very special atmosphere and will, at the same time, move us deeply. A te ne vengo Orfeo, messaggera infelice.
Monteverdi said it was only through the uniting of poetry and music that it was possible to truly move an audience.
Di case più infelice, più funesto.
When Orfeo discovers that his wife has been bitten by a snake,
Oimè, che modo.
He reacts with shock. He freezes, and his musical lines freeze too.
La tua bella Euridice, oimè. Orfeo was such a success that Vincenzo Gonzaga ordered a second performance within days. This is the church in Mantua, where in 1599, Monteverdi had married the beautiful Claudia Cattaneo, one of the singers at court. Over the years, she'd kept Monteverdi going in a job that was far from ideal. Mantua is a very difficult place to live in the winter, very foggy, very humid, and the drudgery of the work that Monteverdi was expected to do from those demanding Gonzagas made their life a misery. After the triumph of Orfeo in 1607, just a few months later, Claudia died. Monteverdi was broken. Now that he lost his wife, he knew he had to get away. And this is where he came, Venezia, Venice. A powerful trading port and a rich, self-governing republic. Monteverdi was now 46, and he landed the most prestigious musical position in all of Italy, director of music at St. Mark's Basilica. He worked here for 30 years. The job gave him the financial security he craved and left him free to compose for the local nobility and rich merchants, putting on shows in their lavish private palazzi. It was Venetian mercantile wealth that led to the next big development in opera. With all this money around, opera went commercial, and in 1637, the very first public opera house was opened. And it was around this time that the word opera, which means literally work or opus, came into use to describe the new art form. It was for the commercial stage in 1643 that Monteverdi wrote his final masterpiece, The Coronation of Poppea. It was highly unusual for the time because he based it on a true story. In a theater somewhere near here, the premiere of L'Incoronazione di Poppea took place. We're on the edge of town, and the premiere took place at carnival time, when, shall we say, morality and morals in general were slightly relaxed. I say that because this is an opera about the Emperor Nero, for all intents and purposes a serial killer, and his affair with the ambitious courtesan Poppea. Now this opera is so depraved, so full of sex, ambition, murder, intrigue. This is an opera written by a 76-year-old man holding the most important church musician position in all of Italy. And for him to write something like this, which even today is quite shocking, is remarkable. Yeah, it's hard to believe, actually. The sadistic Nero is being played by a woman, but in Monteverdi's time, the leading man was sung by a castrato, a vocally gifted man who had been castrated before puberty, which left him with an ethereal but often powerful unbroken voice, the fashionable sound of the day. With Monteverdi, it seems there's tremendous degrees of variety. I mean, for this film, I'm workshopping a scene from the opera with soprano Danielle Denise playing Poppea and mezzo-soprano Sarah Connolly as Nero. There's a fantastic freedom in this music, depending on how you want to color the line. Poppea and Nero have just had a night of adulterous love.
Signor de non partire, sostien che queste braccia ti circondino.
These arms that want to wrap around you.
Come le tue bellezze circondano.
With this sinuous vocal line, you can picture the lovers wrapping their arms around each other. And then what we get is a dialogue, and he's talking about excuse me, your breasts, actually.
No, not my breasts, Poppea's breasts.
Yeah. So.
Di questo di questo se noi i pari. Guarda le mamme tue, le mamme tue, più dolci nomi, più dolci
playing Nero, you haven't to be sort of nervous about being specific and singing words like mamme, which doesn't just mean breast. It means almost like boobs, your beautiful, beautiful boobs that give me fantasies at night. That's all I think about. That's all I want to hold and touch and feel.
This would have been sensational, obviously, rather shocking, and therefore fantastic theatre. The 17th century Venetians lapped it up. They absolutely loved that kind of thing.
At the end of the opera, Nero has married Poppaea and crowns her empress, and they sing a sublime love duet.
An encircling of two people around each other where they sort of sing and echo each other's sentiments of love and devotion and commitment.
They finish on the same note, in total unison. And we very much try to tap into each other's sound so that we are like one voice that's split in two.
The coronation of Poppaea was the culmination of Monteverdi's brilliant career and was a huge public success. Monteverdi's works were part of an explosion of opera in Venice, and by the end of the century, 16 new opera houses were built there. It soon became a booming industry right across Italy. The great composers of the day were all at it. Vivaldi, Scarlatti, and Pergolesi, between them, wrote over 100 operas. And Naples became its next center, with the king himself a passionate supporter. Now, an opera house becomes an essential part of any proper palace. And this is a proper palace, I must say. But being a king, in his elite theatre, he only wanted extravagant performances of opera seria, heroic stories depicting the trials and tribulations of gods, warriors and kings, leaving comedy, opera buffa, to other theatres in the city. Opera is still a thriving industry in Naples. This theatre was being restored and modernized for the 21st century when I came here. Naples was a mecca for new talent and attracted the best singers and composers from all over Europe. One of the most promising to visit was the German-born George Frederick Handel. He came here soaking up the Italian style, which was all the rage. And the well-schooled, well-connected composer exported his version of opera seria to London. From the very beginning, Handel was exposed to the creme de la creme of English society. He lived here for 3 years at Burlington House, now home to the Royal Academy. He was the guest of Juliana, the dowager widow of the 2nd Earl of Burlington. And when Handel's German patron was made George I, King of England, he couldn't lose. He was perfectly placed to spread the fashion for Italian opera. The king gave an annual grant of £1,000 to the theatre in the Haymarket, and Handel, now with royal patronage, went on to dominate the opera scene, opera in Italian, for the next 20 years. Handel's Julius Caesar epitomizes all the elements of his genius. Wonderful melodies, vocal and instrumental display, and at the heart of his craft, the aria, which had come a long way from its original meaning, a simple song.
Non ti sperar chissà, se il regno non l'avrai, avrai forte in amor. Se il regno non l'avrai, avrai forte in amor, avrai forte in amor. Chissà, chissà.
If you want to be a successful opera writer in the Italian style, you've got to write great stuff for singers. And of course, that's one of the wonderful things we find with Handel. He's saying, okay, let's take the aria, let's put the singer on the stage. This is the age of the singer, really. The singers are beginning to take control because people are coming in, they're paying tickets to go and see these operas. What are the audience?
So a star system.
It's a star system.
Avrai forte in amor.
Handel lured the best Italian singers to the capital, the pop stars of their day. They commanded huge fees and gave him the edge in London's competitive opera scene. Danny, you've sung the role of Cleopatra in Handel's Julius Caesar to great acclaim, and I mean, it's 8 arias.
It is long.
And a duet. What's it like singing and acting out so many different kinds of emotions? Because each aria is quite different from the other, isn't it?
That's my favorite thing about singing any of the Handel heroines, that you really have a chance to explore all of the different shadings of character of Cleopatra. Especially, you get a chance to really start with all of the playfulness and all of the bounce in her character, and then you sort of move to the seductive, and then on to some of the more powerful arias.
While he was in Italy, Handel refined his use of the da capo aria form, or what we in the business call ABA form. Now, da capo means from the beginning. And so a singer would sing an aria, would sing the first part, the A section, expressing a single thought.
Tu sei, togli gli occhi miei, sei tutto crudeltà, sei tutto crudeltà.
In this scene, Caesar is furious because he's just been presented with the severed head of a Roman general. Then they would continue on to the B section, which would express a contrasting thought, or in this case, a heightening of Caesar's anger. Then he would come back to the first section, the A section, but this time the singer was expected to ornament the melody, to embellish it, to bring new colors to it. Can you give us an idea what you would do with even something that's already quite florid? I mean, when you're doing these ornaments, you're going higher, you're going lower,
Yes, as you would if you were in a towering rage with somebody, I suppose.
Esempio dirò tu sei, togliti gli occhi miei, sei tutto crudeltà, sei tutto crudeltà. Sei tutto crudeltà. Esempio dirò tu sei, togliti gli occhi miei, sei tutto crudeltà.
Da capo aria should always be screwing up the dramatic tension as well as being musically accomplished and as well as entertaining the audience and provoking big applause at the end of the number.
While Handel thrilled London with his opera seria, in Italy, opera buffa, or comic opera, with its simple stagings, was flourishing in small theatres that had sprung up in every town. Opera buffa told tales of ordinary people, albeit in quirky circumstances.
In an opera buffa, you get away from the conventions of opera seria. You can put servants on stage. You can make the story about the servants. You can give them the best music to sing.
Opera buffa appealed to the middle classes. It was much cheaper to stage, and now the public could actually afford to go. And the next composer to revolutionize opera wasn't Italian either. It was none other than the great Mozart himself. Born in Austria, he traveled all around Italy with his father, devouring everything he heard and performing as a keyboard prodigy in theaters like this gorgeous one in Mantua. He'd already written a couple of Italian operas by the time he was 14.
When Mozart started writing Italian operas, which was the prestige area at that time, the way you could make the most money, there's no doubt about the fact that he always wrote with a German accent, if you want. And this is particularly the case with the instrumental parts. Germans were famous for writing instrumental music. Italians were famous for writing vocal music. Mozart could blend those two together.
And when he eventually joined forces with the Italian librettist Lorenzo da Ponte in Vienna, they created 3 opera buffa masterpieces, Don Giovanni, Così fan tutte, and The Marriage of Figaro, about a crazy day in a noble household when 2 servants, Figaro and Susanna, are trying to get married. When you think that in the first number, for instance, of Marriage of Figaro, it's a wedding day, and all the preparations are being made. And you have the bustling figure. You have the second violin's playing this. Now, in a lot of other composers' music, that would be the main feature. But no, at the same time, we have a figure, a very measured figure. And this is Figaro measuring a bed, which is going to be the bed he and Susanna will sleep in, to see if it fits in this room. So together, those 2 figures. Against that, you have Figaro thinking, oh, this is going to be good. Oh, yes. Now, those are 3 different kinds of music, but they're all happening at the same time.
Cinque, 10, 20
Mozart makes the orchestra a character in the drama, evoking mood, telling us what the characters are thinking and feeling. He brought the lifeblood of theater through the orchestra. Just listen to the woodwind duetting with Figaro's vocal line. But it's not just the orchestral color that makes the opera sparkle. It's the words. Now it's quite uncanny how Mozart, a non-Italian, working with an Italian librettist, manages to capture the rhythm of the language, the innate musicality of the language. Listen to this line. When Susanna is explaining how the Count is tired of chasing these foreign beauties, il signor Conte è stanco di andar cacciando le straniere bellezze forestiere.
Il signor Conte è stanco di andar cacciando le straniere bellezze forestiere.
The double consonants, cacciando, bellezze, beauties.
E di chi dunque?
Della tua Susannetta.
Di te?
Dimmi medesima. Ed ha speranza che al nobile suo progetto utilissima sia tal vicinanza.
A lot of time and effort was put into this way the language needed to jump off the page so an audience would be kept on the edge of their seats, somehow kept alive by the rhythm that is in the speech.
Don Basilio, mio maestro di canto e suo mezzano, nel darmi la lezione mi ripete ogni di questa canzone.
Chi? Basilio? O birbante!
The Italian is perfect. In Handel's operas, characters rarely sang together, but Mozart seized on the dramatic possibilities of the ensemble, even allowing the servants to outwit their masters. The Marriage of Figaro has one of the great ensembles of all opera. It's the finale of Act Two, and what's brilliant about it is that it's many different kinds of music all at once. It starts with the Count trying to bash down the door, thinking that Cherubino, the young whippersnapper who's in love with the Countess, is hiding. So the orchestra is just slamming away here and breaking that door down. And the Count saying, "Come out here, you wretch, sciagurato, garzon malnato."
Escio vai, garzon malnato, sciagurato, non parlar.
Ah, signore, quel furore, per le samme contremar, per le samme contremar.
Finally, the door does open, and who comes out but Susanna? But instead of playing the dramatic card, Mozart goes in a completely different direction. Signore! The music is as coy as it is clever.
Cos'è questo cuore? Il brano prendete, il paggio cedete, quel paggio malnato. Vedetelo qua, quel paggio malnato. Vedetelo
Of course, the Count is furious. I was wrong. How could I have been mistaken?
Che sbaglio m'hai presi, che sbaglio m'hai presi, appena lo credo.
So you see how the orchestra is participating in the way these people are thinking.
Signori di fuori son già I suonatori.
Imagine the theatrical tension that is built through these different layers in this ensemble, adding a character and then another character with a different kind of music.
Ah, signor, cosa è stato? Che violenza che veggi che
The music becoming more and more energetic, more theatrical. Faster, louder.
Vengo qui per testimone del permesso matrimonio come fatti
This way of taking the audience, of grabbing them by the scruff of their necks and showing them some incredibly real emotions, was just a step into another world. This is Mozart's genius, the way he has ratcheted up this tension to finish the act. Mozart's theatrical use of the orchestra laid the ground rules for the master of comic timing, who was as Italian as you can get, Gioacchino Rossini. Born in the small town of Pesaro on the Adriatic coast in 1792, just a year after Mozart died, he wrote 40 operas in 20 years.
When you look and you listen to Rossini, you have life.
Sarò docile amoroso. Scusi, no signore, non scusi, no questo no. Tenerissimo di cuore. Scudiero, no signore, un scudiero, questo no. Coronare dozzinale. Amoroso. Coronare ma plebeo. Saro. Coronare dozzinale. Amoroso. Lei fa male di me. Solamente immaginare. La scenetta originale veramente ad raccontare. Mi fa male, solamente immaginare. La scenetta. Mi fa male, la scenetta. Mi fa male.
Rossini's father was a trumpet player and a horn player, and his mother was a singer. Now, his father was a fervent Republican and a notorious political agitator. In fact, he was thrown in jail for a year. And of course, this made life very, very difficult for the young Rossini and his mother. But he recognized his little boy's talent. And although Gioacchino was a mischievous child, a very mischievous child, he was very, very well trained from the very beginning, devouring the music of Mozart and Haydn, especially. In fact, in school, he was called Il Tedeschino, the little German, because he was absolutely, completely enamored of this repertoire. In fact, it formed him in a way. It imbued him with a sense of classicism, proportion, elegance, and wit, which became his trademarks, of course. Like Mozart, he was a precocious talent. He had his first opera staged when he was 18, and within 3 years, he had composed 10 more. It didn't take long for him to reach the famous stage of La Fenice in Venice. Here in 1813, Rossini was catapulted to fame with his opera seria Tancredi. He was 21 years old. Over the next 16 years, he rose to stratospheric heights, writing at great speed both opera seria and opera buffa. His musical versatility was extraordinary. He once famously said, "Give me a shopping list, and I'll set it to music."
Io giuro.
by Rossini's time, the rising star of the operatic stage was the tenor.
I think Rossini has played a very important role in putting the tenor on the top.
Io la ritroverò, se fosse in gremo a Giove. Io la ritroverò, se fosse in gremo a Giove. La troverò, sì la troverò.
When the castrati died out, he in a way passed that emblematic voice, emblematic figure, to the tenor and the mezzo-soprano.
Rossini was the master of different types of vocal delivery that showed off his singer's prowess. This style of writing for the voice was known as bel canto, literally beautiful singing. But it's so much more. I've come to the Rossini Festival in Pesaro to see my friend Juan Diego Flores performing in one of Rossini's lesser-known opera seria, Zelmira. It has some of his most challenging writing for the tenor voice.
Maestro.
Ciao, Juan Diego.
How are you? ¿Cómo estás?
The day after the show, we met up for lunch, with Juan Diego sporting a beard grown for his role in Zelmira. Last night, you sang with such incredible virtuosity. I mean, I've worked with you, I've heard you sing very quick, I've heard you sing high, but yesterday, the extremes to which... No, but the extremes to which the music is written and the demands. It almost sounds unsingable.
You're right. In Rossini, you have to sing a legato phrase,
A smooth
a legato phrase, and suddenly a passage of coloratura. Suddenly.
Fast-moving notes, yes.
Exactly. For example, yesterday in Zelmira. Se caro a te sonio legato, se respira il figlio ancora. That's the coloratura. So it's a change of gear.
Yes.
You cannot let yourself go, oh, se caro, because then you cannot do,
Yeah.
You're too wide, you're too open, you're too...
That's a fantastic explanation.
So, you know, in the coloratura, you can depict different emotions, I think. And this is the wonderful thing of listening to a Rossini singer. That with the coloratura, he can be mean, he can be happy, he can be, stressed, worried, tormented.
Dolce speranza, freddo timore, dentro al mio cuore stanno a pugnare. Dolce speranza, freddo timore, dentro al mio cuore stanno a pugnare. Dolce speranza, freddo timore, dentro al cuore.
It's the expression of extreme feelings. These crazy coloraturas, extreme music, mad tempi are the expression of the madness of the character, of the madness of his feelings at that moment.
Rossini's Barber of Seville is his crowning masterpiece, and for my first time conducting it, I'm working with the directors Moshe Leiser and Patrice Courrier at the Royal Opera House.
The pressure, the tension,
The key characters are Figaro the barber, Rosina, a young ward, and the tenor Lindoro, a count, who's disguised here as a priest. Like Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, Rossini's Barber of Seville is based on a Beaumarchais play with the same central character, Figaro, played here by Pietro Spagnoli. Figaro's entrance aria, Cavatina, is no contemplative, sweet little aria. It's a storm of orchestral activity and rhythm. He is the everything to everyone, the factotum della città, and he says, make room for the factotum della città. But we hear his voice from off stage first.
What Rossini sets in this aria is a working class man, barber, that is known for being the matchmaker of the city, and obviously he's a man very much on demand.
He says, what a beautiful life I have. For a barber of quality. And we go ahead in that vein. In the next section, we encounter a device that Rossini almost invented and used very, very often, the Rossini crescendo. Starting very, very soft, the orchestra becomes louder and louder, gradually.
Tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, donne ragazzi, vecchie fanciulle, ho la parrucca, resto la barba, ho la sanguigna.
Here's the crescendo.
Tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, ho la parrucca, prendo la barba, prendo il biglietto, Figaro.
They're calling him from everywhere.
Figaro, 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 Figaro.
I don't know what to do.
In the aria, he depicts a man under stress.
One at a time, he says. And then the patter of patters.
Bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, fortunatissimo, fortunatissimo, fortunatissimo per verità. Fortunatissimo, fortunatissimo, fortunatissimo per verità. Sono il factotum della città, sono il factotum della città, della città.
The public couldn't get enough of Rossini, and his working life was as hectic as his music. He was contracted to write 2 operas a year for Naples, but The Barber was written for Rome, and legend has it he dashed it off in less than 3 weeks. And yet, he created one of the greatest roles for the mezzo-soprano voice. The heroine is played here by Joyce Di Donato. Now, Joyce, this is Rosina's entrance aria, her Cavatina. We find out a lot about her in this aria. Can you tell us, what is it about her? What's going on?
Well, the first thing is she's a teenager, and she's quite impulsive and full of hormones, I think. The problem with her is that she's stuck in a room, barred behind windows, and kept by an old tutor who wants her for her dowry, for her money. So her goal is to find a way to break free. The way to that is via a voice that she just heard outside her window, who belongs to the tenor named Lindoro. And she thinks he's going to be the way out for her.
So she's quite resolute, yes?
Yes. And impulsive, I think.
And crafty.
Yeah. And excited.
c'è poco fa.
Plucked strings accompanying.
Qui nel cor mi risuona.
The voice sounded in her heart.
Il mio cor ferito è già.
She's been struck by Cupid, if you like. Lindoro is his name.
Il piago.
First outburst. He'll be mine, I swear it. I will win.
La vincerò. Sì, l'indoro mio sarà.
She repeats the same words.
Lo giurai, la vincerò.
It is the most difficult music. It has to be precise. The dynamic has to be right, the phrasing has to be right, the colors have to be right, the character has to be right. It is incredibly written music.
Sweet and loving. I let myself be led.
Mi fa guidar, mi fa guidar.
But
Ma se mi trovano dove il mio demone non viverà, sarò e 100 dragoni prima di genere a giocare.
What just happened? What just
She
happened?
says, but, Ma, if anyone touches me, I can become like a viper and go back up and just rip scorn all over them.
It is that very malicious, rebellious character of a young girl that Rossini depicts in his music.
She's back.
Io sono docile, frustrated.
It's not a question of love, it's a question of air.
But now you did what we call a portamento. You glided, you brought the voice up. And you rolled the R.
Yeah.
And what does that bring?
What I think this does is really show Rosina's craftiness and her intelligence. She gets a bit carried away, she's a bit over the top, and she's got to bring it back to her task at hand, which is laying these 100 traps. So...
And then what?
She's back to her wily ways.
On the first night of our production, Joyce fell and broke her leg on stage. But true to Rosina's indomitable character, she soldiered on for the rest of the run in a wheelchair. Rossini wasn't the first composer to set the Barber of Seville to music. 30 years earlier, Giovanni Paisiello had a huge international hit with his version. On the opening night of Rossini's Barbiere di Siviglia, the theatre was packed with Paisiello followers who were there expressly to disrupt the proceedings. The opening night was a fiasco. But Rossini went on to have the last laugh, because his biting, cynical comic masterpiece completely eclipsed Paisiello's rather timid affair. By the 1820s, opera, like musicals today, was big business, and Rossini's Barber of Seville is still one of the world's most performed operas. Rossini was a true man of the theatre, and just before the finale, he throws in an incredible, crowd-pleasing showstopper.
And at the end, you have to sing one of the most difficult arias in the repertoire.
The moment we've been waiting for now.
Il più lieto, il più felice, il mio corte così avanti. Non fuggite, o lieti stati della mia felicità. Non fuggite.
This aria is difficult because it's like a compendium of bel canto. This coloratura is very fast. It's the stretta finale, means the last race. And it has a lot of chromatisms, high notes, jumps, and it ends with a very long high note.
There's some variations now. Little stretta, in other words, a tightening of the music. Stretta feeling again, the Rossini crescendo. Chromatic scale. Typical cadence. Typical Rossinian ending.
You took me very fast. Yeah, it's fun, huh?
Yeah, it's great.
It's like a...
Hey, now I can say I conducted The Barber of Seville. End of the dress rehearsal. Audience very enthusiastic. In fact, the tenor aria stopped the show today. How far opera has traveled, from Monteverdi to Rossini, with Monteverdi's freedom and eroticism to Rossini's precision and wit. Grazie ragazzi. Bravi. Adesso lo dobbiamo fare di nuovo, Questo è il problema. In the next chapter of Italian opera, it will take the romantic bel canto fervor of Bellini and Donizetti to prepare the way for the titan, Giuseppe Verdi.
Good one, eh?
That was fun. I need this though.
Such fun.